Alright guys, you know the drill, it's time for Monster Hunter Wilds. After almost 100 hours with the release build, thanks Capcom by the way for the review key, it's time we go over my favorite selection of tips to ensure you get the best possible start, as well as some mistakes that I kinda wished I knew about sooner, so without further ado, let's jump right in. At number 1, I have the obligatory tip to not stress too much about builds or best items until you reach high rank. Gear, at least at this stage, will not matter nearly as much as you think it does, and it all becomes obsolete anyway by the time you reach high rank. But for those of you who still may want a set direction, as well as a couple of my recommendations, here are a few for both weapons and armor. So the weapon paralysis tree early on unlocks very soon in the story once you defeat Lalabarina, but it's also a very useful one for some of the weapons. This lets you stun enemies so easily, and almost every monster is super weak to paralysis. The sharpness on these weapons is usually really good too compared to other options, despite the lower raw physical damage. Plus the boss isn't too difficult to farm either. This depends on your weapon choice too, like you can literally make the ore tree work early on with a higher raw damage, and it's very cheap to actually build with it. Now in terms of armor at a low stage, just go with whatever has the highest current defense or close to it. If you don't like how the newest looks like, that's because defense is going to be your most important stat for survivability. It's not like you're going to be able to build anything too spectacular with the skills you have available right now on gear. However, if you still want some recommendations, there's a couple of them in there that are noteworthy. Specifically, one of them is the Ajarakan set, as this is the earliest with a more noteworthy skill, a level 3 path breaker that you can get via the helmet, chest and the feet. So this makes breaking parts faster and gives bonus damage when popping wounds. Oh, and since I know I'm going to get this question a lot, yes, you unlock Transmog, aka layered armor, the moment you reach high rank. So once you do that, which doesn't take too much, every high rank armor piece that you now craft will also have its skin unlocked for you. So you can go at a 10th, pick the customized armor option in the last tab, and you can now apply those skins on any armor you currently have equipped on your character. You can even change the color patterns on them, which I found to be really cool. And also don't skip on Seikret customization. This actually unlocks even earlier in just the first couple of chapters, and let me tell you, there's a lot to make it truly unique. But let's jump straight into some useful combat tips to always know in Wilds, because many things have changed compared to previous Monster Hunter games, and specifically combat and hunts will feel much faster because of some of the new features that just make it so easy to absolutely destroy enemies or stun them very quickly. And one of them is the new Wounds/Focus Strike system. Wounds is going to be one of your highest sources of damage. When you hit a monster enough times in the same spot, a glowing red wound will emerge on it. Using then a focus strike against that wound with R1 will cause it to erupt, sending that target into a world of pain, dealing lots of damage as well as huge amounts of stagger. So this is going to be the gameplay that you want, constantly doing this, as that's going to be one of your highest sources of damage. And for many of the weapons, it actually synergizes very well with how they function. For example, for any weapon that has a gauge or a charge meter, it's going to charge much quicker if you perform that focus strike on the wound. So this is going to let you cast your other stronger abilities way sooner. So this is the playstyle you're always going to want to do. Apply those wounds. This is not just going to help you a ton in just dealing with that hunt way quicker, but it's going to be one of the most amazing ways to farm creature parts. More on that in just a little bit. In the meantime, there's also a trick to perform focus strikes without inflicting any wounds. So many times when an enemy unleashes a devastating attack, you will see that part of their body used to cast that attack also feature a similar red glow as the wounds you create yourself. Except that is only going to last for a brief moment before it disappears. But if you're on your toes and you manage to hit that in just the right moment with the focus strike, that's literally going to give you a free focus strike that pops up that whole wound over there and again has the same effect as if you did it the regular way. So for example, for dragons, it's the mouth that lights up after using a breath attack. Others may have their front legs or arms immediately glowing up after a massive ground stomp, while others will show it in other rear places, if you get my meaning. But basically, pay attention to it, it's going to glow up. If it glows red, absolutely use R1. Now, besides this, we also have the offset attacks, aka counters. These are special moves that some of the weapons can do to deflect an attack by hitting the monster just as it's about to land its own hit on you. Think of it as a clash of swords between two very skilled warriors, except one of them is absolutely ginormous. But this doesn't just completely negate all of that incoming damage, it also sends the enemy on its back and stuns them right away. So this includes the Great Sword with the Rising Slash, the Wyver counter ignition from the Heavy Bowgun, and also the upswing from the Hammer, but Switch Axe and Hunting Horn also have their own versions. And I'm not going to lie, the Great Sword is by far the easiest and coolest to pull off. It's arguably just a press of a double button, so triangle and circle at the same time, compared to everyone else who basically has to do a whole bunch of loops to pull this off successfully. That is why Great Sword has great in its name. And also, maybe be careful at which weapon you pick, because for example, heavy bowguns, not all of the models will have the Wyver counter ignition. Some of them actually feature a different skill, so this means they will lack the offset attack for that particular model. Always check out on the item description to see if they have it or not. Oh, and one final tip on combat, you don't actually need earplugs because of some of the skills weapons have, so skills with dodges baked into them can also dodge the monster roar, if that makes any sense, which kinda removes the need for earplugs. Well, not really, but it's still very cool to pull it off. So just for example, the longsword foresight slash or the bow charging sidestep, if you do it at the right moment, you can actually bypass that. Early on, it can give you a nice extra couple of seconds of damage since the boss is busy just screaming, I guess. But moving on next, let's also talk about some Seikret secrets. No doubt the most convenient addition to Monster Hunter Wilds is your new mount, so here's a few tips and tricks to make it even better. First of all, the Seikret has no cooldown on how many times you can call it in combat, so whenever you get downed by a boss, assuming that you're not unconscious, you can just whistle and you're literally going to get saved more times than you can count. Maybe this is going to get nerfed at some point. Besides that, it's also way easier now to jump on the enemy's back no matter what weapon you have. You don't have to go with an insect glaive or even like a long sword or any other weapon that launches you in the air. Literally just jump on the Seikret and then launch yourself on the enemy's back, inflict some wounds, and then use R1 again to pop them up and always send them into a complete stun. I'm still somewhat baffled how easily you can use this. Now, besides that, we also have quick actions, so the D-pad quick actions can also be used while not mounted to call the mount immediately and perform that action right after. So for example, if you just press down on the D-pad, that's just the Seikret call button, so it doesn't really do anything besides lifting you off. But if you press right on the D-pad, it calls the Seikret and immediately switches to your alternate weapon set. If you press left, it calls the Seikret and immediately opens up the pouch in case you want to quickly transfer potions between each inventory. If you press up, this is going to call the Seikret and also make it auto-follow to wherever you set your objective marker towards. But do keep in mind that you can also press these buttons while already being mounted to perform the same actions. This is just a way that helps in combat to immediately go to those desired actions. And finally, let's not forget about the Seikret pouch. Every now and then you might fight a very long boss encounter, lol, maybe not, but even so, you may end up with no potions left for whatever reason. Well, in this case, just press left on the D-pad, open up the Seikret pouch, and chances are they already have at least a couple of potions for you and other useful items in that area. Maybe a dung pod or maybe some other juice in there that can help you against fire or frost buildup. Moving on to number 4, don't skip on charms. It's not going to be something you unlock too late into the main story, but it's something with a heavy impact that's going to only increase as you progress into high rank. So charms is basically a whole new separate item which basically does one thing. It gives you access to more equipment skills. So guess what? This is going to make it much easier for you to reach the max equipment skill level of your desired skill. Say for example you want, I don't know, exploit weakness. There's one for them in there, but pretty much every single skill has a charm that you can go ahead and craft. And early on the extra point can help quite a bit, but in the end game, once you max it out, you can literally save a whole skill setup so you can focus your armor set on something else instead. You will need higher grade mats, but as you can see, it's always going to be worth it. But moving on to number 6, we have the same old Monster Hunter question. Do you capture or do you kill? First of all, preferably neither, because you see, in Monster Hunter Wilds, the correct answer is actually to break the monster, as in both break its physical body, like severing a body part or destroying a piece of their armor, but especially so destroying its wounds with focus strikes. Doing focus strikes on wounds is by far going to give you the highest amount of creature parts of anything you can do with that monster, kill or capture likewise. That is because every time you destroy a wound, you're going to get a creature resource out of it, which means as you do it dozens of times over the course of a single hunt, that means you're going to get dozens of materials compared to just the handful of them that you get the normal carve or capture way. Take this poor Chatacabra as an example. When I pop all of its wounds, you can see all of the materials that are given to me as my character automatically collects them. Yes, that's going to be done automatically now whenever you pop off those wounds or break any body part. So the more wounds you inflict, the more of these you're going to get. Now, there are some body parts that have a 100% guaranteed drop chance exclusively when breaking certain body parts. Otherwise, other ways may give much lower chances. Such as, for example, again, Chatacabra's shell that you use for the weakness exploit talisman. It's a guaranteed drop if you break the poor thing's arms. So if you break those arms, you're always going to get them no matter what, which is why having a weapon that does that can be helpful in these situations. You're always going to want to consult your field guide to see which parts are breakable on the mobs, as it's always been the case. Not to say that capturing doesn't have its place. On the contrary, capturing has a few advantages. One, it includes the fact that you can finish hunts much faster since you can now take out the monster as early as 30% HP left, though some of these values can vary. Second of all, there are exclusive missions that exclusively require you to capture that mob and not kill it, so this is also very important. And finally, the other reason you want it is because you also get more higher chances for more rare rewards. So that is because various creature fluids and creature gems, which usually drop very rarely, have a much better chance to drop when you capture the beast instead. That is why specifically for these more rare creature parts, I recommend capturing when there's no other way to get them, as that's going to increase your chance to acquire them at the end. I've even seen moments when I would get multiples of these rare items than I would normally by just hunting and taking down the creature. Again, use the field guide to see exactly which items fit this category. But let's keep on going to the next tip, which is to complete all side missions, but mostly in high rank. For a few reasons, but every map will open up more and more side missions from villagers you help as you progress into the main story, as well as you level up in high rank. But these can be a great source of items and even high-end crafting materials, and that is because as you help out these villagers, they will also help you out once you complete their missions. So in this case, you're going to get material retrievers and item traders. So material retrievers are just NPCs that, as the name implies, will gather items that you specify or request from them. So this can be anything like honey, as well as other consumables like parashrooms and sleep herbs, pretty much stuff that you normally are too lazy to hunt for. And as you can see, a single batch of retrieved items can give you dozens upon dozens of those requested items and then some, to the point that one single trip literally gave me enough honey to never have to worry about it again. Besides that, we also have item traders. These are special villagers who will accept various offerings in exchange for sometimes very useful rewards. So like, for example, giving in various tokens or treasures or even consumable items for something that may be way better, maybe a very important food ingredient, but even more so, high rank creature parts. So like, for example, in this case, we can get a rank 6 or even rank 7 one that can be very helpful if we were to have this item right here to trade in for that creature part. But obviously, you're going to have a lot more options than this. And the best part about this is that you don't even need to travel to each of these respective zones to grab them manually from NPCs. Instead, Nata will be your villager intermediary. So you can just talk to him at any of your main camps and you can get all of these rewards straight from the trade screen right here. So that's going to be very helpful. Additionally, side missions are an amazing source of XP in the high rank, as literally most of the missions will end up with a hunt as well. So not only do you get the XP from completing the hunt, but also by giving in that mission. Now, in terms of exploration, the only couple of non-spoiler tips I have for now is that A, don't always trust what you see on your map HUD, because even though you see monsters over there, sometimes not all of them will show up. So it's better to look into the active monsters lists for each specific region. In fact, you can even go ahead and highlight them and then create a specific mission for them that will just make your character automatically follow towards that. There's also some extra convenience in this because you can create quests for monsters in other maps, which is going to immediately transport you to that map and closer to that mob if you want to go ahead and farm it. And on that note, definitely take advantage of whenever the weather turns bad, especially during inclemency, as high-grade rare mats will now have a chance to appear. And guess what? A lot of these rare resources will find uses in many of the high-end recipes. Now, in the 7th category, let's talk about meals. Just like in the previous Monster Hunter game, it's better to craft your custom meal as you can specialize it more into maybe damage or defense or resistances. Plus, it's almost always going to last way longer. And of course, never go without a meal in any battle, as you're going to get a lot of extra HP and extra stamina if you do eat first. Say you're confident in the next hunt, you might as well just pick a meat, which is going to boost damage, but if you want something else, you can go with veggies if you expect some status effects. Then, as you acquire more additional ingredients, like from missions or from merchants, also look out for the special skills on the shrooms or other additional ingredients, as some of them may be very strong. For example, Specialty Sealed Garlic gives Moxie's meal that prevents fainting one time into a hunt and even heals you back up. Others like the Deadly Shroom can greatly reduce stamina depletion if you are especially playing with a bow, but there's pretty much everything for everyone. Equally, finishing touches like the Monster Chili can be incredible in some of the mid to late game story maps, as they provide complete immunity to climate effects in both hot and cold climates. And trust me, at least for the cold resistances, you will want a ton of that. Plus, with a custom meal, you get 50 minutes of effect duration instead of the typical 30. You can of course see all of this information here to the right side as you build your meals up, and you can even save them as favorites. At number 8, let's talk about your Palico. Besides upgrading everything, upgrading your Palico is more important than ever. From completing missions specifically for him, they will unlock new skills for him as well as level upgrades for those skills. And usually these missions involve capturing Vigor Wasps. And there are so many options in here that will make your Palico so much more useful. There's even one Vigor Wasp revival that I got at high rank that pretty much revives me after fainting in combat. Extremely helpful, but there's others that can set up more traps or even provide Vigor Wasps that can cleanse some of the ailments applied to you, which can be very helpful against many of the poisonous enemies. And of course, besides that, the typical Monster Hunter tips also go for your Palico, so maybe early on, craft a status weapon for it right away. Like I said, the Lalabarina Claw can work very well here to complement your paralysis setup even more from the same boss. It's not like your Palico does too much damage, but having that extra status ailment over there can help quite a bit. Anyway, last but definitely not least, here's a few extra tips that didn't make it into their own category. One of them is that you may want to just collect everything. It's very easy with your ranged slinger, pretty much zipping everything like Spider-Man, grabbing those resources, as most of them will be very useful. Especially so, pay attention to any ancient bone deposits as well as any rock formations that you can mine. Both of these are going to be very useful. You can even craft some very respectable armors and weapons as you progress in high rank very quickly because of them. And as you progress in the maps, higher and higher grade versions of those bones as well as those minerals will unlock from the deposits specific to those locations. Additionally, if you're having difficulty with any particular enemy, chances are that there are hard counters in its surrounding environment. Stuff like flash pods, flash bugs, and other similar things. Especially if it's flying, usually flash pods are amazing at quickly taking them down. If it's something that burrows underground, it's usually a screamer pod that helps a ton with it. or if it's constantly changing locations, using these spots can also interrupt their pathing so that you can have an extra shot at them. Besides that, place camps everywhere for fast traveling. This can help a ton to reduce time as you travel between hunts or when those hunts travel from one place to another, as you constantly track the monsters. You can do so from the pop-up camp manager as well, right here at your main base. In this case, it's going to cost some of those guild points to do it automatically from this screen, but it may be worth it. Plus, as you progress in the game and into high rank, you're going to unlock more and more of these camp locations you can place more camps into. But safety levels are also very important because the more dangerous the area, the more likely it is for that camp to be destroyed. However, once it is set, the camp eventually does get repaired over time automatically, so it's still worth having them nonetheless. But before I leave, there's one more tip I have for you, and that is set the following changes in the settings menu. One, in the second tab, go ahead and change the focus mode in melee from hold to toggle. This is going to help a ton so that you don't have to hold L2 all the time. Instead, you can just trigger focus mode pressing it once. And from this point, you can also customize the main menu. You can pretty much rearrange categories however you see fit so that you have the info you want right at the first screen. Or make a custom favorite page with all of the menus you want to feature in there, such as the map, field guide, and so on and so forth. There's quite a surprising amount of customization you can have for the main menu. And with that, we pretty much concluded today's perfect start guide / tips / mistakes you want to avoid in Monster Hunter Wilds. Let me know down below as you progress if there's anything extra that's super secret and you found out. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.